Well, good evening to each and every one of you, and let me say welcome to another edition of WordUp Wednesdays. I'm excited about being back this week, and I hope and pray that you are as well. Go ahead on, before we even get started, like, love, and share this broadcast with someone. Let someone know that we are back this week with WordUp Wednesdays, and I'm excited about coming to you wherever you are. If you're in your home, in your car, at work, wherever you are, I'm excited about being able to spend time with you tonight as we study the Word of God. I hope and pray that you had a wonderful week thus far. If not, I pray things get better for you as the week continues. Listen, let's go to God in prayer. God, I thank you for our time together. I thank you for blessing us with another day. We pray your blessings upon this broadcast. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to study as a church and to study your word. Be with us in Jesus' name, amen. All right, we are going through the dysfunctional families in a sense of the Bible in this Family Matters study that we've been journeying through the month of September. We're almost finished with it. May tie into a little bit of next week, but that's all right. Tonight, grab your study guide, grab your materials, whatever you need, and let's dig into this word tonight. Hopefully by now you have somewhat of a working understanding of what a dysfunctional family is described to be. And for our time tonight, I want to give you another definition like I've been doing all month long, providing us with several ways to look at what a dysfunctional family could be. A dysfunctional family is typically defined as a family displaying one or several of a number of family problems that affect the relationships within the family and the mental health of the individual family members. It is typically defined as a family unit displaying one or several of a number of family problems that affect the relationship within the family and the mental health of individual family members. Now, there are a wide range of family issues that create tension and stress, and often the children or teenagers in a dysfunctional family are the ones who feel the repercussions most. They feel the repercussions of dysfunctional families the most. Now, over the past couple of weeks, I've been giving us several symptoms or types of dysfunctional families. And tonight I want to give us something else to consider. And what I want us to consider tonight are the roles in a dysfunctional family. I want us to look at the roles in a dysfunctional family. Now, most of us know that families operate like a system and oftentimes like a machine, which means that when this family operates, each family member plays a specific role that keeps the family or the system or the machine running. All of the roles have their own script to follow, and people adhering to these roles end up continuing the dysfunction within the family. And according to Psychology Today, here are the 8 most common roles that people can fall into in a dysfunctional family. The first role, you have the scapegoat. There is always a person in the family who will be playing the role of the scapegoat. The person in this specific role is the identified problem and is usually blamed for all of the family's issues, whether they are actually the problem or not. The scapegoat is the person who is identified as the problem and is usually blamed for all of the family's issues. This role is typically, not always though, held by one of the children, and they are often considered as the black sheep of the family. That's the scapegoat. Here's the second role, the hero. You will always find someone in the family who is high functioning enough that the family uses them to convince themselves that there is no issue within the family. This person is high functioning enough that the family uses them to conceive, or rather to convince themselves that there is no issue within the family. This person who operates in the hero role, this person justifies the presence of the scapegoat and carries the burden of presenting the facade of the family being functional. You have the scapegoat, you have the hero. Here's the third one, the mascot. This person plays the role of the emotional referee by stepping in with a little humor and positivity to diffuse or distract the serious issue or the serious matter. Think about your family. Think about it. And in every family, we'll find somebody who's the scapegoat, who'll play the role of the hero, who'll play the role of the mascot. But then we'll also find someone who plays the role of the identified patient. The identified patient. This is the person who is frequently the family's reason for having problems. They are given this label because while the family thinks that this person is the reason for them having problems or coming to grips with needing to go to therapy or having counsel, they know that that the true issues run much deeper than one person. Scapegoat, hero, mascot, identified patient. But then we have the caretaker. The caretaker is the individual that attempts to keep everyone in the family as calm and happy as possible, even if it means covering up deeper issues and dysfunction. While this may help the family operate on a daily basis, it ends up preventing the person who takes on the caretaker role. They end up preventing the family from healing and functioning in a healthier way. This individual, the caretaker, keeps everyone in the family as calm and happy as possible, and they even try to cover up deeper issues and dysfunction. And while it may help the family operate in a sense on a daily basis, it prevents the family operating in this role from healing and functioning in a healthier way. Here's the other one. You have the lost child. This family member tries to blend into the background in order to avoid being involved in or creating conflict. That's the lost child. This person is usually more of a loner and usually struggles, some say, with self-esteem. This is the person that tries to blend into the background in order to avoid being involved in or creating conflict. They try to distance themselves. Then you have the parent-fied child. The parent-fied child. The parent-fied child. This is the one who will take on the role of the other spouse in an absence of a healthier caretaker relationship. Sometimes this role is also seen as the caretaker, but not always. In adulthood, it's described that this person is frequently drawn to relationships with a lot of dysfunction and emotionally unavailable partners. They struggle with boundaries and base their self-worth on their partners or others' approval or opinion. Finally, you have the golden child. This is the child that the parents project all of their positive qualities onto, which often makes this child the favorite. This child also adopts and lives out the parents' moral code. You all know the golden child in the family. They can do no wrong. They are perfect. They are spotless. In fact, these this is the individual where someone will say, well, I wish you were like them. Look at your brother. Look at your sister. They don't have these issues. That's the golden child. So these are the roles that dysfunctional families operate in: the scapegoat, the hero, the mascot, the identified patient, the caretaker, the lost child, the parent-fied child, and then you have the golden child. Now, why did I give those roles? I gave those roles so that in your own study, you'll be able to see in our text tonight and maybe next week which role will each family member play. Which role will each family member play? Tonight, our limit, we are looking at 2 Samuel chapter 13, verses 1 through 22. 2 Samuel chapter 13, verses 1 through 22. We're still in the Old Testament, which means that we are dealing with Hebraic texts. The literature tonight, we are still in the books of history. The Old Testament has 12 books of history. And as I stated last week, 1 and 2 Samuel were originally one book of history. And without the two, there would be a gaping hole within the canon, within this measuring rod, the Bible in which we call it. They contain important history that allows us to make sense of what takes place between the judges and the establishment of the royal line of David. What you'll notice in 2 Samuel that is not in 1 Samuel is that 2 Samuel details the reign of David specifically, and that reign is broken up into two parts. The first part, which is chapters 1 through 8, chapters 1 through 8 gives us the information about David's rise to power. That's how 2 Samuel is broken up. Chapters 1 through 8 details for us David's rise to power, the success, and how he accumulated the power that he had as a king. Chapters 21 through 24, however, not chapters 21 to 24, rather chapters 9 through 20, I got ahead of myself. Chapters 9 through 20 details the sin and the ensuing troubles within David's family. So chapters 1 through 8 details for us David's rise to power. Chapters 9 through 20 details the sin and the ensuing troubles within David's family unit. David's family was full of dysfunction. Do not disregard this. David's family was full of dysfunction, and that's what we're going to look at tonight. Now, chapters 21 through 24 of 2 Samuel conclude the portion of Samuel with some poetic material about David's life and David's reign and David's kingship. So that's what chapters 21 through 24 give us. I just gave you the breakdown that is really broken up into two parts, with chapters 21 through 24 being the portion with some poetic material about David. Also, what we notice within 2 Samuel that's not in 1 Samuel is that around chapter 7 of 2 Samuel, you will see a theological centerpiece. You'll see a theological centerpiece in chapter 7 because it is in that chapter where David is promised an eternal dynasty. It's in chapter 7 where David is promised, that's the theological centerpiece there, an eternal dynasty, that his reign will be forever, that his line will produce, his lineage will produce an eternal dynasty. That's where we find Jesus coming into play. That's why when you read throughout the New Testament, he's referred to as the Son of David, or he is from the loins of David. That's how this theological centerpiece in chapter 7 of 2 Samuel is centered. It's around David's lineage producing an eternal dynasty. The location in which we are centered in is Jerusalem. We're in Jerusalem. So we got our limit, our language, our literature, location. We are located in Jerusalem. Now, let's go through our leads. Let's look at our main characters tonight in our text. First person you'll notice will be, I didn't list them all the way together, but the first person you'll see is a man by the name of Amnon. A-M-N-O-N. A-M-N-O-N. Amnon. Amnon's name means faithful. Amnon's name means faithful. He is David's oldest son that was born at Hebron. He was born at Hebron while the city was still capital of the nation of Israel. Faithful. His name means faithful. Amnon, A-M-N-O-N. His name means faithful. He's David's oldest son that was born at Hebron while Hebron was still the capital of the nation of Israel. We then will find a man by the name of Absalom. A-B-S-A-L-O-M. A-B-S-A-L-O-M. Absalom. His name means in Hebrew, father of peace. Father of peace. He's David's third son by Micaiah. He's David's third son by Micaiah. Micaiah was the daughter of the king of Jeshua. And based on Absalom's royal lineage on both sides, being that his father is a king along with his grandfather, he was a potential heir to the throne on either side. He will be noted as a popular prince with the people, and Absalom will even be considered a favorite of his father. So outside of Solomon, Absalom will also be a favorite son of his father. Have one individual named Tamar who's in here. Tamar, not the Tamar from Genesis, but Tamar here in 2 Samuel. Her name means palm. She is the daughter of David and Micaiah, and she is the sister of Absalom, both on mother and father. She is the full-blood sister of Absalom. We have David. We know David. Then there's another man that's mentioned in this text, Jonadab. Jonadab will be mentioned in this text, Jonadab, Jonadab. His name means God is bounteous. God is bounteous. God is bountiful. He's a friend of Amnon, but we also discover something else, and I'll deal with this as we go down into the text. He's more than just a friend. So we have Absalom, Amnon, Tamar, David, and Jonadab. Those are our characters for tonight. Let's dig into this. I promise you, give me about 15, 20 minutes. I'm done. We're out of the way. After David's scandal with Uriah's wife, Bathsheba, after Uriah's murder and David's moment of conviction in chapters 11 and 12, chapter 13 seems to continue this dreary and dysfunctional path that David's family is following. Within chapter 13 of 2 Samuel, there are some horrible events that take place. The first event is the story between Tamar and Amnon. Following will be Absalom's murder of Amnon, Absalom murdering Amnon, and then finally the event surrounding Absalom's return from exile. Though David is indeed, in this pericope, a man after God's own heart, his family unit, however, is infected with dysfunction. Isn't it interesting how he could be so close to God, but yet his family can still be so distant? When we look at verses 1 through 7 of this, of 2 Samuel chapter 13, these 7 verses detail Amnon's sick and perverted love for his half-sister. His half-sister Tamar, and this sick and perverted love is used to plot to have her. And this is really the beginning of the dysfunction within this chapter. Verses 1 and 2 share with us some disturbing information. The text says that this happened sometime afterward. Absalom, son of David, had a beautiful sister named Tamar. And Amnon, son of David, became infatuated. That's what the Jewish Study Bible says. Infatuated with her. Verses 1 of the New International Version said, in the course of time, Amnon, son of David, fell in love with Tamar, the beautiful sister of Absalom, son of David. Amnon, verse 2, became so obsessed with his sister Tamar that he made himself sick. She was a virgin, and it seemed impossible for him to do anything to her. Automatically, verses 1 and 2 detail to us that this is not love, but in fact, it's lust. And what we start to see is how this young woman, Tamar, appears to be more of an object rather than a person. She will be seen as an object rather than a person. And he's so obsessed with her that he's sick. He's obsessed with her to the point of sickness. No one knows really what this sickness could have been. I would like to denote that it was somewhat of a mental illness. Because sometimes having something that you cannot, or rather that you're not supposed to have, can cause or can be caused by several things. All of us know what it's like to have a sense of wanting something that you know you cannot have. And this is where Amnon is. And when this happens, it can sometimes be caused by, first of all, this having a dopamine hit. Having something or wanting something that you know you're not supposed to have gives you, firstly, a dopamine hit. D-O-P-A-M-I-N-E. Dopamine. Our brain chemically releases a hormone called dopamine. It's called the happy hormone. And it happens, or it comes about anytime you get this sense of release or this happy feeling when you get something that you always wanted, or when something good happens for you. It gives off this dopamine hit. But also, having something or wanting something that you know you're not supposed to have also can be caused by what some call the scarcity effect. The scarcity effect. This is a psychological phenomenon that says when you see something that is rare, desirable, or expensive, your subconscious mind makes you think about having it more than if you saw something that was abundant. Gives you a dopamine hit, but then it also could be caused by this scarcity effect. That it gives you this sense of wanting it because it's rare, it's desirable, it's expensive, you don't see it often. And you feel as if because of that, you've got to have it. But then also, having something that you know you're not supposed to have, or wanting something that you want, could be also based upon comparison. gives you a dopamine hit, the scarcity effect, but also it can be caused by comparison. We've always, or often, I hope you've heard this before, that comparison is the death of joy. And when people say that, it's for a good reason. Because comparing ourselves to others never ends. It never ends well. Jealousy creeps in, and we think we need to keep up with others in order to feel good, worthy, or valid. And when we compare ourselves to others, we often end up chasing things because we think we should have them, regardless if they're good for us or if it's even what we want. So perhaps this perverted love, which is really lust, came over Amnon because of scarcity, comparison, dopamine hit, or any other rationale that we could probably present tonight in this case of proving how sick and dysfunctional this really is. Because he's so in love with his half-sister, Tamar, he talks about it with his friend Jonadab. And in verses 3 through 5, we see Jonadab's character within these verses. He is really, Jonadab, the brains behind the plan that will bring about this brutal and incestuous rape of Tamar. Jonadab is introduced as a friend of Amnon. But when you do background, when you do some study about Jonadab, Jonadab is really somewhat could be considered as Amnon's cousin because he is the nephew of David. And when we read this, look at what it says. Now Amnon had an advisor, a friend named Jonadab, son of Shimeah, David's brother. Jonadab was a very shrewd man. He asked Amnon, "Why do you, the king's son, look so haggard morning after morning? Won't you tell me?" Amnon said to him, "I'm in love with Tamar, my brother Amnon's sister." Look at the plan, verse 5. "Go to bed and pretend to be ill," Jonadab said. "And when your father comes to see you, say to him, I would like my sister Tamar to come and give me something to eat. Let her prepare the food in your sight, in my sight, so I may watch her and then eat it from her hand." You see his character unfolding? He's labeled as a shrewd individual. That term could really be centered around him being cunning or crafty. And the plan that is devised is that Amnon and Tamar will be left alone with each other. He is to fake his sickness, and when his father comes to visit him, then he is to ask that Tamar comes to his aid and take care of him. Verse 6 tells us that Amnon follows through with this plan. Amnon lay down and pretend to be sick. The king came to see him, and Amnon said to the king, "Let my sister Tamar come and prepare a couple of cakes in front of me, and let her bring them to me." David sent a messenger or a message to Tamar in the palace. It said, "Please go to the house of your brother Amnon and prepare some food for him." Here is where we see something starting to change, because David once again becomes complicit in sending someone to a terrible fate. However, this time it's unknowingly. The first time that he did this was way back 2 chapters ago, chapter 11, when he sends Uriah to be on the front line of the battlefield to protect the beautiful kingdom But in fact, it was really so that Uriah could die, so that he could cover up that he had slept with his wife. This time, David is sending his own daughter to her demise, and he doesn't even know it. Watch what he did. He goes in where Amnon is. Amnon is pretending to be sick. Amnon follows Jonadab's idea, tells him, listen, hey, I don't want anybody to come and take care of me but my sister, Tamar. Have my sister Tamar come and take care of me. David, being naive to this, not knowing things that are going on, David sends a message, hey, your brother Amnon is sick. He specifically asked that you come in to take care of him. Here's a lesson that I see from this. This can show us that wicked things happen in our families when we don't have enough discernment to pay attention to the signs. Wicked things happen in our families when we don't have enough discernment to pay attention to the signs. David shows us that either he just did not know his children, and that discerning his son's plans would cause more damage than harm. This comes from David probably not spending enough time with his children and not knowing whether or not his children are playing, if they're ill or not. You know how we used to do as kids. We used to fake that we were sick just so we could stay home. And if your parents were wise enough, they could see right through it, especially for mine, especially with my grandparents. I could not get nothing past them. If I played like I was sick, I was still going to school. And even if I was sick while I was at school, my grandmother would say, well, let them stay there until I get there. And she would never come and get me until it was time for me to go home for school. I mean, wicked things happen in our families when we don't pay attention to the signs. David sends Tamar to go take care of Amnon, not knowing what would happen. What happens? Well, in verses 8 through 14, Tamar follows the order of her father, and her innocence is taken away because she's raped by her brother. Look at verse 8. Because right there in verse 8, Tamar's actions are really caring and nurturing. She goes in. So Tamar went to the house of her brother, which shows us that each prince and princess probably had their own house. They did not live in the king's palace, but they had their own quarters, their own house. So the text says, so Tamar went to the house of her brother Amnon, who was lying down. She took some dough, kneaded it, made the bread in his sight, and baked it. Then she took the pan and served him the bread, but he refused to eat. Send everyone out of here, Amnon said. So everyone left him. Then Amnon said to Tamar, bring the food here into my bedroom, so I may eat from your hand. And Tamar took the bread she had prepared and brought it to her brother Amnon in his bedroom. Verse 11, but when she took it to him to eat, he grabbed her and said, come to bed with me, my sister. You see how this is unfolding? Tamar thinking all she's doing is trying to take care of her sick brother, and yet things change. Verse 9, he refused to eat, insists that everyone is sent out from around. He wants no one to witness what's about to happen. And in verse 11, Amnon voices his demands, and in his demands, he grabs her, and he is not, with his demand, to be denied. He tried to persuade her with his words, but at the same time, he retains hold of her. He grabs hold of her tells her, come in bed with me. Come get in the bed with me. Come lie with me, my sister. Now, it is unclear whether laws against incest were forced at this time. Very unclear. Even though we have scripture, Deuteronomy 27 and 22, Leviticus chapter 18, verses 9 and 11, and even Leviticus 20, verse 17, it is still unclear whether the law against incest is forced at this time, especially as it pertains to someone in their position. They're children of the king. And in some cases, the laws did not mean anything for those in power. Let's keep reading. Because even in this, verses 12 and 13 is very crucial for us to look at, because unlike Bathsheba in chapter 11, Tamar has a voice and an action in this story. When David takes advantage of Bathsheba in chapter 11, nothing was said. But in chapter 13, Tamar speaks up. She speaks and acts with wisdom and courage, but she's still taken advantage of. She says right there in verse 12, no. And no is a full sentence. No. This shows you that this will not be an incident of consent. She says, no, my brother. Don't force me. Such a thing should not be done in Israel. Don't do this wicked thing. What about me? Where could I get rid of my disgrace? And what about you? You would be like one of the wicked fools in Israel. Please speak to the king. He will not keep me from being married to you. Look at what's happening. She offers, firstly, an alternative proposal. In the midst of her repeating, don't do it, she's demonstrating her objection to this, but she's also offering an alternative proposal. She's saying, hey, listen, here's the alternative. Here is the alternative. Verse 13. Let the king allow us to marry one another. Don't take my virginity away. Instead, don't do this wicked thing. Instead, let me marry you. If you want to do this, I don't want the repercussions or the consequences to look down upon. I don't want that. Let me ask the king to allow our hand in marriage. That's the alternative. Instead of you raping me, marry me. Don't do this. And then she even, right there in verse 13, she even states the shameful consequences of rape for both of them. Here's the shameful consequences. There are two consequences. She, firstly, would have to live in shame. Watch what she asked. She asked the question right there in verse 13. What about me? Where could I get rid of, or how could I get rid of the disgrace? She knows that custom would suggest that if she is a virgin and her virginity was taken away without being married, the law of the land would be that she would live a life of disgrace. She would be humiliated. On the other hand, Amnon's consequence is that his reputation would be ruined. Watch what she says right there in verse 13. I know I got to back this up with scripture. Where will I carry out my shame? And you will be like any other scoundrel in Israel. You'll be like any other fool here in Israel who have done such a wicked thing. Don't do it. Don't take advantage of me. Don't ruin your life and mine at the same time for a quickie. Just because you are so infatuated with lust, you are full of lust with your sister. Now, here's the question that I ask. Now, I know good and well he had the opportunity to get any woman he wanted to get. After all, he's the prince. What was it about Tamar? It goes back to him having something that he knew he shouldn't have. Maybe his position as a prince, his power as a prince got to his head, and he was like, you know what? I know I can have anybody that I want to have, but I'm going to have my sister. You see the dysfunction? That's it. She lists out all of the consequences and even provides an alternative to this. Marry me. Now, while she begs rather, for Amnon to marry her, to arrange a marriage, because she believes that David would follow through with this plan, Leviticus chapter 20, verse 17 forbids marrying one's half-sister. Leviticus 20, verse 17 forbids one marrying one's half-sister. However, in Genesis chapter 20, verse 12, it could have been easily possible when you examine Abraham and Sarah. Just, this is Bible study, so we're studying the Bible. The law forbids marrying one's half-sister, even though in Genesis chapter 20, verse 12, it could be possible that it happened when Abraham married Sarah. Verse 14 tells us that he refuses, he wouldn't listen to her, and it describes how the rape is direct and brutal. But verse 14 says, but he would not listen to her. He overpowered her, and he laid with her by force. In verses 15 through 19, just like in verses 1 through 7, Amnon's feelings seem to come back into the narrative, just like it was in the beginning. In the beginning, he was full of lust, and now he's full of hatred. After violating his sister, he now tries to discard and disregard her. After he got what he wanted, look at how he treats his sister. Verse 15 says, then Amnon felt a great loathing for her. A hate came over him for her. Indeed, his loathing for her was greater than the passion he felt for her. What changed? You loved her so much, and after you took advantage of her, now your love turns into hatred. Amnon said to her, get out. And in verse 16, Tamar speaks again. Bruised, bleeding, and humiliated. She knows the repercussions of being thrown out and being exposed to people. And she argues that sending her away would be an even greater wrong than what he had already committed. The reason why she argues with him not to send her away in verse 16 is because she knows that she will have to live as an unmarried woman for life. No one will ever want her again. That's what Deuteronomy chapter 22, verse 28 and 29 tells us. That she will have to live an unmarried life for the rest of her life in her father's house. No one will ever want her. Look at how he treats her. At first, he loves her. When he talks to David, she's his sister. But now in verse 17, she's just a woman. Look at verse 17. He his young attendants and said, "Get this woman out of my presence," and barred the door behind her. Notice how she's viewed. She's no longer Tamar, his sister, his love. She's just a plain old woman. Here's another lesson. When people get what they want from you, you'll discover who you are to them by how they treat you afterward. And this is even seen in our family. When people get what they want from you, you quickly discover who you are to them by how they treat you after they get what they want. Teach pass, I'm trying. Even in our families. And that is dysfunctional. When families just suck you dry and get everything they want, that is dysfunctional. When they manipulate you emotionally and physically and psychologically, and even in a sense, to do whatever they want you to do and get what they want out of you, that is, my friends, dysfunctional. After Amnon got what he wanted, the question is, did he really want it? I think for Amnon, it was this game for him. I can get any woman that I want, but I'm going to try my sister. It gives him a sense of clout. I got her. Not even realizing the damage he would do to her and himself. Verse 18, the narrator offers us some more details to the narrative because the text says that she was wearing an ornamented tunic, for maiden princesses were customarily dressed in such garments. Look at verse 19. Tamar put dust on her head and rent the tunic she was wearing. She put her hands on her head, walked away, screaming loudly as she went. These are expressions of grief. She's hurt. She's humiliated. She's violated, not by someone in the town. She's raped by her own brother. That tunic that she's wearing symbolizes that she's no longer a virgin. Verses 20 through 22 as I close show us how Absalom and David are made aware of the tragedy, but only one of them will do something about it. And dysfunction continues with hatred, because Absalom vows to never talk to his brother again because of the incident. Look at the text, and I'm promising you I'm done. Her brother Absalom said to her, "Has that Amnon your brother been with you? Be quiet for now, my sister. He is your brother. Don't take this thing to heart." And Tamar lived in her brother Absalom's house as a desolate woman. Now, I have problems with that because he tells her, he tries to silence her. It seems to be something good, but it's really hurtful because he tries to silence the grief and the pain associated with this incident and tells her, don't take it to heart. You can't tell her not to take this thing to heart, seeing that she was raped by her brother. She was raped, number one. Then, number two, she was raped by her brother, and now she has to live a life of shame and disgrace. Verse 21 says, when King David heard all of this, he was furious. And Absalom never said a word to Amnon, either good or bad. He hated Amnon because he had disgraced his sister Tamar. Notice verse 21. When King David heard all of this, he was furious. And that was all. That was all. He was furious. He's upset. He's ticked off that this happened, but he didn't do anything, not a thing about it. He didn't do anything to seek justice for his daughter, which once again shows us how in the biblical text, women were not seen as people. Their humanity was not seen as anything valid. They were seen as objects and property. We saw that even in Genesis with Dinah. But there's more to this. Next week we'll look at the events to follow, because more dysfunction is to come. I'm done. I'll hang up my hat tonight and I'll look at it again next week. But isn't that a tragedy? Some of us probably knew this story. Some of us, this may be your first time hearing this in the Bible. I'm telling you, the Bible is full of dysfunction. Listen, as we come to a close, email us your comments, email your questions, email me some ideas for some Bible study lessons at wordup@mysjcc.org. wordup@mysjcc.org. Email us so I can hear from you, hear about how the lesson is going, how the time of study is going. Give me your comments. Give me some questions. I'll try to answer them as much as I can, and even give me some ideas for some lessons down the road. Listen, don't forget that our women's retreat is scheduled for October. I believe it's October the 13th and the 14th. It's a Friday and a Saturday. So you'll see that on our Facebook, our social media pages, along with our website. The price is $45 per person. It'll take care of your meals and your materials for the weekend. So make sure, women, you sign up and invite someone else to be with you for this time of renewal, reflection, and some power with that. So that's Women's Retreat 2023. It's held in October. Price is $45. Don't forget that baptism is this Sunday at 9 a.m. And listen, when you come into worship, I hate I have to do this, but when you're coming into worship, our service begins at really 9:25. When our announcements come on the screen, that's when really we are starting to live stream. And so we want to ask that you minimize your fellowship. I know you hadn't seen your brother, your sister in a week. I know. But listen, as our announcements are playing, you get a chance to see what's going on in the life of our church. And when you are loudly talking, you miss some of the things that are taking place. And that's why most of us are asking, well, what's going on? Or, I didn't hear that this was going on. You missed it because you didn't pay attention to the announcements. So when you're coming into worship, be mindful that the announcements are showing on the screen around 9:25, and then we're going right into worship as soon as that is over with. Also, listen, as we celebrate Breast Cancer Awareness Month in October, we're celebrating our survivors, and we're even remembering and honoring those who have transitioned because of that. But listen, we are looking for persons who don't mind sharing your story. If you are a survivor, cancer survivor, and don't mind sharing your story during the month of October, listen out for the announcements, because we have some chances for our members and people who are watching us online to hear your story and to hear about your journey with cancer or through cancer. And so we want to honor you by doing that. So listen, stay tuned for the announcements so that we can share your story during the month of October. I love you. I'm always praying for you. Be safe out here in the streets. Don't forget to wear your mask. You know, COVID is still around. Don't forget to wash your hands and do all of those good things. Until we meet again, I love you. Peace.